So first of all, I really thought you did a good job when I saw the questions in your eighth grade class, how you planned out the specific ways that kids would interact with different questions, like whether it would be whole group, write, pair, and share, all that kind of stuff for your planning. What kind of impact have you seen from doing that kind of planning for each question to know how students will interact?
Um, well, like outcomes, you mean?
Yeah, how's
Well,
that
I think like
impacted the
once it was
class?
put in practice, I think it made their written questions a lot more valuable because they actually spent a lot more time on it, and I had a lot less trouble trying to have them focus on those writing questions. Whereas sometimes um, they'd still want to try to chit chat about the question or something like that. They got to do a lot of that talking on those other questions leading up. So I think it made it more effective for the writing, at
Awesome.
least. What I want to focus on, and this was something that I know Mr. Kuba has observed during my formal observation,
Oh, okay.
was making sure that the conversations for those turn-in talks are meaningful and that
Okay.
100% of students are participating.
hmm
Because when he like scanned the room for a couple of the questions that he sat in for, um, it wasn't near enough.
Gotcha.
You know,
So students were just kind of like talking about whatever.
that or I mean, he was there first thing in the morning, and so he was just saying like not all of the students were talking to each other. It was like for sure if I was standing there or like listening
Yeah,
in,
but like once
but
you
what
walk
about
away,
what's
yeah.
going on the other side? And so I've been trying to figure out different ways to address that. And one thing is making sure to go over expectations before I let them loose.
Yeah.
And just kind of trying to make that something that I repeatedly do or have them do it over if it still doesn't look right.
This is a perfect segue into what I think we can focus on today.
Cool.
And that's something that I'll keep an eye on moving forward.
Okay.
Because I feel like now that we have specific questions when we're definitely going to use a turn and talk, we can just make sure, since it's a repeatable process, that it becomes more and more effective. Yeah, I think that's great. I also just wanted to highlight that I thought you did a really good job having observable directions in transitioning. Transitions is something I think we can focus on more today. So whether that was like asking students to have their pencil on the page or having a clear countdown for when you were going to bring the group back together, I thought you did a really good job doing all of those things consistently. Like whenever you do group reading together, it's always like, we're going to be on this line. Everybody put your finger or your pencil on this line. I think like that consistency is something that just makes it predictable for students what you're going to be doing. So I think that's great. And as I kind of alluded to today, I think it would be really helpful to focus on transitioning specifically in and out of group reading or group practice. Something like specifically of like, we've just finished answering a TDQ, now we're going to go back to read the next section together, like the transition between those two things, or vice versa. When it's like, we just finished reading and now I'm giving directions to go into a TDQ. So that's kind of why I thought it was a good segue that you want to focus on those clear directions, because I think that'll be a part of what we focus on today.
Okay.
So just to make sure we're on the same page, when you're transitioning between those types of activities, what to you like shows you whether it's an effective transition or not? Like, what do you want to see out of your transitions to know that they're going well?
I think the biggest thing is noticeably seeing compliance throughout. So especially going from we're finishing up a TDQ back into reading, I think that one's harder than the opposite one because sometimes you have kids that are actually working on it, but they're not done, and they really don't want to look up or change focus until they've completed their thought on their paper.
So when they're transitioning out of work, that's when it's most challenging.
Yeah. And because then on the other side, you have the student who wasn't doing a whole lot of work and they're suddenly like, oh, our work time's over. What are we doing? And they're trying to ask, or they're trying to get an answer, or, and it can quickly become, instead of like a 5-second thing, now it's taking like a minute to get everybody back on track.
Gotcha. Yeah, I've definitely seen that transition, especially as one where, like, when you're starting to bring kids back, then like kids start doing, like you said, a whole bunch of different things. And so that's, I think, like something that we can focus on cleaning up. The other, I think you named, like one major piece to me is that students know what to do during the transition, and then like as they come out of the transition, they know what to do, which you were like referring to, that like our kids actually doing what you ask in the transition. To me, the other part of it is that it's an efficient transition, that like time isn't wasted, and like it takes, like you said, like you wanted it to take like 15 seconds, but it can end up taking a minute or two. That's another way we can determine, like, is this transition achieving what we want to do? So like, do they know what to do, and then do they do that thing that you wanted them to do, and does it happen quickly? So what all, and I'm glad I feel like you've, in everything we've talked about today, both like what you recognize from the formal and already identifying like which transitions are toughest. I feel like you're being really reflective right now, which is great. What I think will be helpful is I'll do like a model of how I would do the transition so you can kind of see some of the things that we can focus on.
Okay.
It's like a little awkward, especially when I'm being videoed, to like get up and do a model, but especially since there aren't actually kids in the room, so when I'm doing the model, I'll like say things that kids would be doing within the role play, so it'll be like kind of strange, but go with me here for a second.
All right.
So I'll just stand up and do it, and I'll like, at times I'll pause and like, kids are doing blah 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 right now. It's like what would be happening in my role play. So when I'm doing the role play, if you can just focus on, if it's helpful to take notes, then I would do that. It's like what I do to make the transition clear and efficient. There are like a few things I'm gonna try to do during the role play.
Okay.
All right, so we'll get started. All right, so let's finish up our discussion with our partners in the next 15 seconds. Well, 15 seconds. All right, I need eyes on me in 3, 2, and 1. And here, like, they actually do have their eyes on me, so like we're good right now. Cool. Okay, so we're going to read lines 245 to 260 together in just a second. What I need is for everyone to put their pencil or finger on line 245 to show that they're ready to read now. I see so-and-so is doing that well. I'm seeing blah, blah, blah is doing that well. Okay, great. I still need 2 more people to make sure that they are putting their eyes on me and their pencils on lines 245. All right, guys, let's pause for a second. I'm still waiting on 5 more people. We need to try this transition again. We need to make sure that this happens super quickly. Every time that this transition takes longer than it needs to, we're really wasting our learning time. So we're going to run it back again. I'm going to ask us to do the same thing, and I need this to happen in 15 seconds or fewer. Remember that the class who is able to do this transition the fastest this week is going to get blank prize that we would come up with. All right, so let's try this again, starting now, and then I'll pause. Cool. So what were some of the things that you noticed me doing during the transition?
The first thing was giving them a chance to finish up their thoughts since it was a transition where you were coming out of like conversations with a partner. So I like that you said that you kind of gave them that 15-second warning before you, where I would be like counting down at that point.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the 15 seconds to wrap things up. Then they also get their still 3-second countdown
Yeah.
to get their eyes on you.
Yeah, I like to kind of do like an earlier signal.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And
so that's
then-
definitely one thing. What else?
And then before you said what you needed to see, you explained what we're going to do. So I like that students know that we're going to be reading from page blank to blank. And then you followed up with what I need to see is your pencil or your finger on this page.
Mm-hmm.
So
what I actually forgot to say is that like when I needed them to do that.
Like how much time?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know if I actually said, but like I should have said I need your finger on or pencil on line 245 like in the next 5 seconds.
Okay.
But I may have forgotten to say that.
Okay,
Yeah, the other thing before I did that I wanted to highlight is some of the positive narration.
Oh yeah, I was getting there.
Oh, okay. Good. Keep on
Hold
going
on.
then.
So after you said what you needed to see, then you pointed out students that were complying, and then you followed up with, whatever students that you still needed to see compliance from. So you actually, I think you might have named them. I still need so-and-so to whatever it is.
Yeah.
And then because it was still eating up time, you told the whole class to pause and you reminded them that they're wasting learning time, and then a little bit more of that, and then kind of reminded them that there would be a reward for the class that would be able to nail that transition this week.
I think those were all the key things. So yeah, the way I think about it is like if I'm seeing like 5 or more students after like my first 15 seconds of like I try to start with positive narration of like who's doing it well.
Mm-hmm.
If I see that like 1 or 2 kids aren't, then I'll narrate for them as well and say like I still need so and so and so and so. But if I'm still seeing 5 or more kids and it's like 15 seconds or more, then like we're not gonna keep like playing around like I need you and I need you and I need you. It's just like we essentially like we didn't do well this transition, so we're gonna do it again. Mm-hmm. I think we could like discuss later like if you're redoing it and you redo it again and there's still like it's still not going well, like how many times do we want to redo it? Because like we don't want to do the same transition like 6 times.
Yeah.
But I think it's helpful to redo with like I also like an incentive. I feel like especially for transitions, kids really get into like the competition for which class can do them the fastest. Mm-hmm. And so that like a little like carrot and the like redoing is like a little more of a stick. I think can be helpful for students. And then I also like want to make sure that I have a rationale for why we need to do these things quickly, which I think as we're like analyzing the interim, we can come up with an even stronger rationale that like feels like urgent to what's going on. But I think that like those are all the key things. Okay. So the way I came up with the way I worded the action step is essentially the things that we just focused on. And it's just to plan key transitions, especially focusing on transitioning in and out of group reading or practice. And I think for us, we can especially focus on what you mentioned of like when they're finishing a question, you're going back to reading. Mm-hmm. And respond in a way that the transition remains crisp and precise by doing a redo of the transition if it falls short of the expectation, and explaining the rationale when redoing, and then build competition incentive for transitioning efficiently. The like narration piece, I think is like part of it. I just didn't list it in here. So as we take our last 10 minutes or so here, for an upcoming lesson for 8th grade, do you already know like where the transitions will happen and what needs to, like,
yeah, I mean,
what expectations you'd have for them?
so I especially tried to do that with the lesson. It's not a Wednesday. It was supposed to be Wednesday's lesson, but that's going to get pushed to Monday.
Okay.
So Monday's lesson then would be this.
Okay.
And it's the first read of Act 2, Scene 2. And what I have listed here is what the kids are doing. So students read silently, then turn and talk.
Perfect.
And then again here, students reread with their partner, each taking a role to read, and then turn and talk followed by cold call. So this is where I think you were commenting on, where everything is just kind of laid out, and then they do their second read, where they're really able to stamp their learning.
I think the detail is great here that you've gone into with planning. As you'd have students transition out of a question back into reading, do you feel like you'd know, like, what you'd need to say to make sure the expectations are clear and, like, they know, like, how they should be, what they should be doing, and how they should be doing it to get ready to read together?
Yeah, because I think that was, I mean, that the modeling that you did is pretty much what I would apply.
Cool.
The incentive thing, I mean, for that one, if you were doing this with multiple classes, would you be timing their transitions then?
Yeah, I would I think kids get really into it when you just say, like, especially, I think you could time every transition, but you could say, like, specifically this week, let's really focus on getting the transition when we're finishing a question and getting back into reading. The class, and you could just say, like, the 8th grade class or the 6th grade class, whatever, or you could say all of my classes. The class that does that the fastest, I don't know, like, it can be something like tiny. I don't know if you want, like a 1 extra point on your, like, assignment for the week, or, like, you'll get, like, a Snickers, like, mini candy, or, like, whatever it is that you want. You don't need to buy anything. I think, like, I sometimes will just do, like, you get an extra class point that, like, at some point will mean something, but, like, right now means nothing. But, like, whatever it is, like, pick whatever, like, you and the kids would want. And then, like, to really show them, like, that you care about it, I would, every time they do that specific transition, I would just, like, have your phone out and be like, all right, like, we're about to bring it back, like, let's get started now. And then just, like, time them every time, and then they can try to beat their time throughout the week. And they get really into, and, like, peer pressure each other to get on task. That to me is, like, one of the biggest tools I have to getting kids bought into transitions, is they, like, get super competitive and will get, like, legitimately upset if someone's, like, not transitioning efficiently. It's, like, pretty funny. It was like, oh no, it took an extra second. They're like, oh, like, what are you doing? So yeah, it seems like you know what you want to say, but I would just make sure you, like, actually time it, because then they'll get really bought into that. So before we go, do you want to, I won't have the video on you. It's actually only been on, it's just me the whole time here. It looks like I'm talking to nobody. But if you want to practice how the transition would go and, like, what you'd say, I think that could be helpful just to get the muscle memory started. And again, I think, like, let's, in the role play, let's pretend that you do need to do a redo. So, like, you do your narration, there are still a few kids who are not doing what they want, so let's, like, pretend that a redo is necessary. And then we'll see how it goes, and I can give some feedback, and then we can finish up for the day.
I'm just gonna look over this.
Sure.
Okay. Do you want me to stand up and the whole to-do, or?
Up to you.
Okay, I'll just do it
I
from
like
here so
to,
I can
yeah.
also look at my notes.
Sure.
Okay. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, you have 15 seconds to finish up your conversation with your partner. Okay, I need your pencil on line 1122 in 3. I need your eyes on me in 2. And I need it to be completely silent in 1. We're going to be reading lines 1122 to 1230. And I need to see everybody's pencil on their page. Thank you, Itzel. Thank you, Siglali. I still need to see Andrew. I still need to see Yair with his pencil on his line number. Okay, there's still quite a few of us that are not having our pencil on our line number, and I just need to take a moment and pause. Right now, when we are not all doing this at the same time, we're wasting valuable learning time. So before we try this again, let me just remind you, I am going to be timing our transition so that the best class will get a Jolly Rancher at the end of the week. Let's try that again. Let me set the timer. And then
Cool.
Say it again.
Sweet. Yeah, I thought that was really good.
I didn't also do the 5-second time allotment thing.
Yeah, I think that you can add in. The other thing I would try is to, as you're doing the countdown, I liked how you had like different parts of the direction on each second.
Mm-hmm.
What you could do to speed things up even more is to start your narrating as you're counting down. So like you can say like, in 3 seconds I need pencils on this line. I see so-and-so already has their pencil on blah, blah, blah. I need eyes on me in 2 seconds. Like I see these people already have their eyes on me. I still need to see this person.
Okay.
So then it's like all contained, because ideally, but like we want to show them by 1 second, or like after I say the 1 second, like I should see everybody doing what I've asked. So then you ideally don't have to narrate more after that.
Yeah.
So you could contain it all in that 3, 2, 1, which like then makes the 3, 2, 1 take a little bit longer.
Yeah.
But then by the time you get to 1, I think the goal is that like you've already said the directions essentially like 2 times.
Yeah.
And even more as you're narrating positively. But I really like that. I think the other thing that I was thinking about is I didn't do this either in my model, but you could initially time the first transition before you redo it and just say like, remember this week we're really focusing on this type of transition, so let's time it the first time too. So then if you have to redo it, then they can just focus on beating their first time, which was like, let's say like the first one takes 25 seconds, and it's like, all right, like we're gonna redo it. I need to see everyone with their pencils on this line at the end of this transition, and we want to beat 25 seconds. But I think it was really strong, and I'm excited to see how students respond to that. I think with the narrating and some incentive, start to get more kids on board quickly.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And I'll actually be here later with Mr. Kubes. Come back at like 10:45. So ideally, if you're able to start like weaving that into class today, that I'd love to see it today, but I'll also be back tomorrow as well, I think. Yeah. But I think this will be really helpful for students, and when I'm in, I can also start to look at turn-in talks to see like if kids are like, when you walk away, if they're not participating, I can also start to like jump in there and be like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
Cool.
I don't know what would help them to do that. I mean, I don't know if it's that they're not understanding the question.
Yeah.
Or if it's laziness.